Indiana football 10-0 for the first time ever. Somebody pinch me because it feels like a dream. Welcome to IU Sports Sunday. He's Ben Howler. I'm Nick Rotocap. It's unbelievable, Ben. What Indiana, by the way, welcome back.
Thank you. It's been a 1 week hiatus, and I'm happy to be back. Happy to we said something on air before just about what the show would be like if we were doing this last year or the year before with the way this football team just has surprised this city and surprised this state.
And that is quite the understatement because, man, Indiana guts it out over Michigan, 20-15 the final. I was calling the game. I was doing color alongside Cruz Martin for WIUX Sports. We were sweating up there. I think everybody watching that game, whether you were at Memorial Stadium, first of all, another rowdy atmosphere, 53,082, I think was the announced attendance.
More towels again.
A lot of towels, and it was good. It was good they had the towels because the fans were sweating.
Yes. Oh, it started raining a little bit at the end.
It did. Wow. Yeah, it's raining right now, but man, nobody in Bloomington cares because this team is 10-0 for the first time ever. They beat Michigan for the third time since 1987. And, man, this is the kind of game that every championship caliber team needs to go through because it shows you what you're made of. It shows you how you're going to respond when things aren't perfect. Like, Indiana is so used to kind of just running teams off the field offensively. Michigan, though, probably the most talented defense Indiana's faced all season, just in terms of raw star power. 3 projected first-round draft picks on that defense, a whole bunch of physicality, and they really shut Indiana down in the second half. But the Hoosiers found a way. Again, it was on the backs of their defense, on the backs of the boys up front, forcing Davis Warren to have to try to throw the ball down the field, and he couldn't do it.
No.
And, I mean, how big was that crowd? Because if that game's at the Big House, I think Indiana, I don't think we're talking about 10-0 Indiana right now.
Yeah, I think the crowd played a big part. I think, too, that Indiana just did such a good job of making Michigan uncomfortable and doing what Michigan doesn't want to do. And that's exactly what you said, and make Davis Warren throw the ball down the field. Once again, Michigan is sitting here right now. I think what are they 4-5 now?
They are 5-5.
5-5 now.
Yes.
After that game, so they have a bye, and then I think it's Northwestern and Ohio State coming up. So, a lost Northwestern, they're probably not even making a bowl game, which is crazy after the championship. But I'll say this about them: they have a lot of really talented individual players.
They do.
I don't have all the answers as to why it's not coming together on the field this year.
I do,
but I'm
Sharon Moore.
Well, I mean, it might be as simple as that. But still, a lot of the individual matchups won, maybe on the front line, specifically on the defensive line. You could still take away how impressive that is. I mean, this Michigan offense is bad, but the offensive line is still one of the better ones that Indiana's played this year. The defensive line was great against it.
Yeah, definitely. I think Michigan up front, I mean, they're just so big.
Yeah.
And you could kind of tell, like, again, Indiana, obviously the injury to Drew Evans, one of the interior O-linemen who had been such a key part of this success for Indiana up front. Evans went down with an Achilles injury in practice on Tuesday in the program. Indiana announced that he would be obviously missing the rest of the season. So Tyler Stevens, a converted tight end, steps in, or he's listed as a tight end, but he's been an O-lineman for his entire career.
Yeah.
Another JMU transfer, a veteran guy has to step in, played every snap, and I mean I kind of figured that Wink Martindale, Michigan's defensive coordinator, was going to dial up some blitzes and get that Michigan D line downhill going into the backfield, and that's pretty much how they shut Indiana down in the second half. The offense, IU, just looked completely dead.
Yeah.
Almost like Michigan, really, after their first drive of the first half. They just couldn't get anything going. Curtis Rourke was under pressure, and I think it's the first time that I've seen Curtis Rourke forced to take sacks and make bad decisions with the football.
Yeah, and it's not all Tyler Stevens. It wasn't all that they were targeting him, but the offensive line did not do a great job last night. And once again, it's the Michigan, just the sheer talent and the raw talent that this Michigan team has. I don't know if you start to be concerned about the offensive line. If you say, hey, Michigan's the best front seven that they're going to play or that they've played so far, Ohio State's front seven is one of the best in the country. So that's something to look for. They're going to have to find ways to work around it. I think you're going to see a little bit more of that, even if Tyler Stevens gets more comfortable against Ohio State in a couple of weeks. But I mean, I guess it's good to still find a way to score with not having that much time in the pocket. He only scored 20 points, but they're going to need to learn to play that way.
Yeah, the film study for this game is going to be very tough. And this bye week really could not have come at a better time for Indiana because it was obvious, at least to me, that Indiana still, I think it's obvious to pretty much everybody, Indiana still has a lot to work on, especially with Stevens now on the offensive line, somebody who has gotten barely any, if any, snaps in a game this season. Obviously, you can have all the first-team practice reps you want, but when it's game time, things are different. And, Curtis Rourke took 4 sacks yesterday. That's near a season high, if not a season high for him. 17 to 28, 206, a touchdown, but the one interception, it was really 3 passing plays that kind of defined that second half. It was the interception that Rourke threw on Indiana's first offensive play, and it was the 2 drops by perhaps the most sure-handed receiver on this team this year, Elijah Surratt. Just a very odd game from him because he had that great catch where Curtis Rourke just kind of threw it up there and Surratt was open, ran under it. That was that touchdown catch. We're thinking, oh, man, Rourke for Heisman. But then the 2 drops in the second half, Surratt makes those catches, the game is over. The first one in particular really hurt Indiana because that one went off his hands. The second one, it was a leaping grab. He lost it going to the ground. More understandable. But the first one, just right off his hands, you don't see those things very often.
No, and we talked about this a little bit with the Northwestern game and a couple games earlier this season. Sometimes you just need those games from individual players. They're not going to be perfect all season long. I think we saw it for Rourke against Maryland. He had a couple of really bad passes against Maryland. Overall, didn't have his best game against Maryland. But for Surratt, yeah, he'll be fine. There's a lot that goes into it. Playing under the lights for the first time in a while. I know they did a little bit against Michigan State.
You mean Western Illinois doesn't get you ready to play in primetime?
Especially not when that was 2 months ago. And it's the playing under the lights I think is a factor. 2, once again, Michigan's got some pretty good defensive backs. So, you're Elijah Surratt. You're always going to be battling against the other team's best corner or 2. And sometimes you get open on a route, and you put so much effort into getting open on that route that sometimes you forget about the most important part of the play. That's not something I'm particularly worried about as much as, say, the offensive line moving forward.
Yeah.
And maybe it's even a good thing again. We're sitting here, if you're listening to this, if you just woke up from 1-year coma, and we're sitting here saying that the quarterback play and the wide receiver play wasn't great, the offensive line play wasn't great, and Indiana beat Michigan, I don't know what you do.
Yeah, and I think Curt Cignetti kind of summed it up perfectly. Like, we're 10-0. I'm happy that we won. I'm not happy with how we played.
Yeah. His pressure was weird yesterday. He went through mood swings.
Really?
Yes.
So,
were you not in there?
No, I was still taking apart some of the equipment. So take me through. What was the presser like?
He came in guns blazing, happy as could be. Came in talking about like how proud he is of his team being 10-0. Then all of a sudden the flip switched. Because I think the question that somebody asked was, what's it mean for this program, 10-0, blah blah blah, 3-9 before you got here, and he goes, well, let me make this clear. I am not happy about yesterday or about today. And he said, I'm glad we won, but I am not happy with the way we played. And he's like, that's not going to fly moving forward.
Well, he's right. Yeah.
And then he was happy again after that question. I guess he just didn't like Seth Towle's question.
Man, so shout out to Seth for asking the tough questions. I know he was taking pictures yesterday as well, so he was a busy man. But I think Cignetti, he's right. I mean, Ohio State, we've been talking about it all year.
We've been talking about this for so long.
Yeah, it's just crazy to finally
still
see
2 weeks away. But
yeah, it's crazy to see.
What are we going to do with this bye week next weekend? By the way,
enjoy.
Go fishing.
Yeah, maybe watch Ohio State.
Yeah.
See if who do they play next week? Let's see.
I think it might be Northwestern.
Oh, well, Northwestern is a football team. That much we do know. That's about where the parallels end between the Buckeyes and the Wildcats. You're right. They've got Northwestern at Wrigley Field on November 16th. That's going to be a fun game. I tell you what, weird things happen at Wrigley Field. Weird things happen in Bloomington, too. Indiana football now 10-0. I think that they're going to be in the top 6 of the college football playoff this coming Tuesday. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. The college football playoff, once a mere dream for Indiana, one it could only aspire to when no fans were in attendance, is becoming more and more of a reality every single week. And after last night's 20-15 win over Michigan, it was gut check time for Indiana, and the Hoosiers responded well. Welcome back to IU Sports Sunday. He's Ben Haller. I'm Nick Rodecap, and Ben, at this point in the college football season, when there's so much chaos, you've got top 5 teams losing, 2 of them in particular yesterday, Georgia and Miami. Any way that you can win, if you're Curt Cignetti's Indiana Hoosiers, I tell you, it's a good win.
Yeah, and I think it helps so much that Indiana's been doing it by such a wide margin up to this point. They had room for maybe an ugly win like this against Michigan. It's probably their first ugly win of the season, the first time they're winning a game by less than 14 points. But we're getting to a point where it's hard to see an avenue if they beat Purdue and keep the Ohio State game close that this Indiana team won't be in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I know that there's the whole quality loss thing, right? But, Indiana, the players, cannot control who they play against. They can only control how they perform. And Indiana yesterday, despite a targeting call, despite injuries to Justice Ellison and Miles Price, despite being tested up front all game long, they got to stop when they needed to, and they made some plays when they needed to, and they found a way to win. And I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, we've seen it time and time again in the past. Indiana loses those games historically. Games where the other team adjusts better at halftime, comes out guns a-blazing, basically with nothing to lose. And that was the case for Michigan because at this point, you go from the reigning national champs to barely being above 500. You're just trying to play spoiler to somebody else. And that was almost what it looked like Michigan was going to do. I think if Sharon Moore and Davis Warren were a little bit better at their jobs, Michigan easily could have won yesterday because the boys up front were getting it done for the Wolverines. But Indiana found a way. I think that is so telling with what this team is made of. And Curt Cignetti came in on Big Ten Media Days. You and I were both at Lucas Oil Stadium when he said it. He said, we're pretty good at one-score games, he said, referring to him and his coaching staff. And, of course, Indiana lost 4 or 5 one-score games last season.
Yeah.
I mean, he put his money where his mouth was yesterday.
He's only won one-score game this year, dude.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
1-0 in those games, so it's still the only win by less than 14 points. I'll go back to – it's funny you mentioned Davis Warren and Sharon Moore being better at their jobs. Some of those throws by Davis Warren last night, wow.
Bad.
There's look, it's a really talented Michigan team, but I think it shows you, and Indiana saw this with Curtis Rourke going out for that 1 week. The quarterback position is just so important, and Michigan's been through 4 of them at this point in the season.
3.
And,
3.
I thought there was one between Orji and Tuttle.
Maybe they may have started a true freshman at some point. I don't know.
3 or 4, whatever the number is.
None
of them have been good.
Let's check on the Wolverines passing. Just Warren, Tuttle, and Orji.
Yeah, so 3 options. All of them have struggled to this point. Indiana fans know one of them well, and Jack Tuttle. And he, for a while, was beating out Davis Warren. So that should tell you all you need to know.
Yeah, it's kind of tough, but I think the kind of excuse that they don't have any quarterback talent. Curtis Rourke before this season was a good group of 5 quarterback, but nobody was looking at him as the leader of a 10-0 Big Ten team.
Yeah.
So, the idea that, you can't, especially if you're Michigan, the idea that you couldn't go out and get somebody better, I think that's kind of a bad excuse if anybody's trying to make that excuse, which I don't know, but...
Well, here's what I'll say about that. It's weird because I actually had this argument with my dad not too long ago.
Okay.
They won a national championship last year by having a very mediocre quarterback.
Thank you. J.J. McCarthy was a game manager on a super team. Yeah. I was saying it all of last year.
So they're just in the mindset of like, all right, we just need because Alex Orji was going to be the quarterback coming into the year. We just need him to be decent. We just need him to run the ball well and complete easy passes. But
you couldn't do either.
Turns out when you go from having a mega super team to just a like kind of super team, then you actually need good quarterback play.
Yeah, and Alex Orji, he committed a very bad turnover yesterday. Comes in for one play in the second quarter, and Jalen Walker puts helmet on football and knocks it out. Yeah. And that gave Indiana good field position, which led to points. Orji yesterday, 3 rushing attempts for 1 net yard. That's not very good from the guy that you tap specifically to run the ball from under center. Just an ugly performance for Michigan on the ground, averaging 2 rushing yards per attempt. Indiana averaged 1.4, but when your star running back gets hurt because he just got the boom brought to him, it's tough to get anything going. But man, I just your point about J.J. McCarthy being an okay quarterback on a super team, I think that was very apparent. It came in yesterday just how bad Michigan is at the quarterback position right now. But again, if you have any sympathy for them, I don't think you should. Michigan cheated their way to a national title while playing the victim along the way, and now they're facing the consequences of that. So you shouldn't have any sympathy for what Michigan's going through this season.
No, I mean, yeah, it's tough. I think the Big Ten's just been so interesting this season, too, because I think I love my favorite thing about the Big Ten and how shaken up it's been is just how Penn State is. This is like every other Penn State that we have ever seen, and they are not the 5th. They're going to be ranked 4 tomorrow or today? Wait, well,
I mean.
If you look at CFB, they'll be ranked 4 probably, right?
Assuming they just jump every team that lost and don't jump anybody that won, which is what should happen. They'll move up to 4. But
which they do this by winning game. They always beat good teams.
Never great teams.
Just can never beat great teams.
Ohio State.
Which is why it'd be interesting to see an Indiana-Penn State game this year.
Yeah.
I mean, you look back, it truly is. It's something that Indiana didn't get Penn State or Oregon on the schedule this year.
Yeah, well.
I think it was Rutgers. Did you see Rutgers' schedule?
They kind of had a similar schedule to IU.
It is so much easier. Rutgers this year does not play Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, or Penn State.
3 of those 4, of course, Big East teams that they had to play every year for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And they're what, like 5-4, 6-3 maybe?
Everyone was expecting a big year out of Rutgers, literally just because of the schedule they had. And so it's not going the way they planned.
That's to say the least. But the one thing about Penn State, keep in mind, that was a 1-score game between Indiana and Penn State last year in State College. I know it was a 9-point game. There was a garbage time safety. Curt Cignetti talked about that. He's like, Indiana was, within 7 points against Penn State in the final 2 minutes of that game. He's right. Indiana could have upset them last year. That's very Penn State. You beat the teams you're supposed to beat and then lose to the big dogs. And that's why James Franklin will never win a national title with them, because he just cannot get over that hump. And I saw there was a Photoshop picture of Curt Cignetti in a Penn State quarter zip.
I saw that too.
It was great for a laugh. But if you think Curt Cignetti is going to leave Bloomington after 1 year, I have a beachfront property in Wyoming to sell you, because it's not happening. Indiana is reportedly in negotiations with him to keep him around for a long time. and give him some extra dinero too, some extra moolah, some extra cash. Not just for him, but for his assistants, who are, of course, very key.
Yeah, that's the biggest
success.
part of it, yeah.
And I'm sure that Indiana will, in all likelihood, lose an assistant to a head coaching job just because of how good they've been this year. I think that's a reality in all levels of football, at least high school and college. College and the NFL, I should say. Maybe high school, too. That's how Tom Allen got his start, but,
You don't think if I coach my fourth grade son's team well enough as the offensive coordinator, I get the head coaching job somewhere else the next year?
That sounds suspiciously like Jeff Saturday, who did win an NFL game as a head coach. We won't talk about what happened after he won that game, but no. I do think Indiana will probably lose an assistant or two to a head coaching job. Not to Florida, though, because they're keeping Billy Napier. Oh, man. How'd you like to be the person who decided to announce that? Yeah, we're going to stay with our guy. And then, oh, no, Texas just lays the wood on them. That is such a bad beat for those Gators. One of my professors actually went to Florida, and, she's having a rough time. But, you switch to the IU bandwagon, and you're having a great time.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Florida has a lot of young talent. All their NIL money is going to young guys. I think it's 75% are going to freshmen and sophomores. It's not a good decision, but I don't think it's as crazy as people are trying to make it out to be. He definitely has 1 or 2 more years on the clock. But, it is a whirlwind if you fire him. I don't know. College football's weird nowadays.
The whirlwind is a multi-million-dollar buyout. That's the reason they're not going to can him. But wow, I mean, you think about how Indiana yesterday, again, these are the kinds of games that as a program, historically, Indiana does not win. The kinds of games that you watch slip away as, again, J.J. McCarthy is mediocre. But if he was behind center yesterday for the Wolverines and he was making throws under pressure, which Davis Warren could not do, and Indiana got a lot of pressure on him yesterday, we're talking about not 10-win Indiana. But all that matters is that you get it done. They don't ask how, they ask how many. Indiana's up to 10 wins on the season. They've got Ohio State in 13 days' time. A lot to fix, a lot to talk about, and we'll continue after these words. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. In a season as chaotic as any, one thing has been a constant. That's that Indiana keeps on winning. Welcome back to IU Sports Sunday. He's Ben Haller. I'm Nick Rotocap. Ben, it's great to have you back after a week hiatus last week. And man, the stakes just keep getting bigger, and Indiana keeps answering the bell. And the same cannot be said for other college football playoff contenders that are not 10-0 and did not win yesterday. I'm looking at you, Georgia and Miami in particular. Because the Hurricanes, I don't know, something about them playing Georgia Tech, just, forget it, Mario Cristobal. It's not your forte. Tech, 28-23 over the Hurricanes. Another undefeated domino fell yesterday. Certainly seems like everything's coming up Indiana, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, well, look, we were in a spot where if Indiana were to finish the season 11-1 with wins against everyone but Ohio State, which is obviously a real possibility at this point, a lot of things would have to happen for Indiana to not make the playoffs. It was possible, but a lot of things would have to happen. And it just seems like a lot of things are going Indiana's way. I mean, I'd have to go back and recalculate everything, but Miami losing is huge. You're really, really, really most likely looking at a one-bid ACC at this point. And Iowa State losing, you're really, really, really looking at a one-bid Big 12 at this point. Would have really helped if BYU, if Utah could finish BYU off in the Holy War yesterday. But still, BYU can, as long as BYU wins the Big 12 championship, that's fine. A lot of things going the right way for Indiana. I mean, it's going to get interesting with this SEC down the stretch because I think they're going to get to a point where they're going to have to put a two-loss SEC team in, I think. That's going to be interesting, but there's still room now at this point.
So you'd be looking at either Georgia or Bama probably getting in as a two-loss team. But I don't think that's going to happen at Indiana's expense.
No. I mean, and once again, if you were looking at a 2-bid ACC or a 2-bid Big 12, then that's where it becomes like.
And there's still a chance, like with Colorado. What a turnaround for them, by the way.
Hey, RG3 said coolest story in best story in college football.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. I'm sure Colorado being how many losses do they have again? More than none? Yeah. Okay. Best story in college football? No. Off the top of my head, Indiana, Vanderbilt, Florida State, all better stories than Colorado this year.
Well, Florida State's a different story.
Well, no, yeah, hey, the fall from grace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even Michigan, I mean.
Yeah. Michigan, both defending champs being pedestrian.
There were 2 defending champs?
Technically, yes. Big Ten. Michigan,
are you a championship result denier?
Michigan won the Big Ten. Washington won the Pac-12. Okay. Rest in peace.
All
right. But no. I do think there are a lot better stories in college football than Colorado. Colorado's a good story, not a great story. Kind of like Penn State winning games against good teams but not great teams. The same idea applies. But, yeah, I think if the Big 12 is a 2-bid league, you've got Colorado and BYU still with a chance to get in, especially if, say, they were to face off in the Big 12 championship and BYU was to lose to Colorado, because then Colorado would get the auto bid and BYU would maybe get an at-large.
Yeah, I mean, but again, this is like we're talking college basketball, college baseball, and you're talking about bid thieves and bid stealers. Yeah. This is so funny to talk about in college football.
Should we just go to a 68-team college football playoff?
But the same format as college basketball, where you play on Fridays. You're either playing Friday, Sunday, or Thursday, Saturday of the same week.
Oh no!
What if you just played a single overtime period against teams?
Well, then you better shrink the playbook to your best 6 plays, because otherwise
those individual plays would be so much more exciting.
They would. Lots of flea flickers. Michigan tried one of those yesterday. It did not work.
It did not work. No.
Davis Warren cannot throw under pressure. I'm sorry, buddy. You're a great story. Former walk-on, cancer survivor. Not the guy, unfortunately. And I think that was shown yesterday. But you look around the country at the teams that have, I guess, the most indirect impact on Indiana's destiny. Oregon is just walloping everyone right now. I don't see anybody stopping them. I don't think that's a hot take exactly, because you look at what they've done this season. Their offense, extremely consistent. They put up over 30 points in every game. Indiana has not. And Indiana, yes, they did put up 30 points without Curtis Rourke against Washington, but 20 points yesterday against Michigan's defense, which I think in terms of talent is very comparable to Ohio State. And they were without Will Johnson, Michigan was, their best defensive back. Johnson will be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, and he missed his 3rd straight game. I think it was with turf toe yesterday, which is tough. I at this point, for him, I would honestly just shut it down. Get yourself ready for the draft because your team's going nowhere. Oregon with a pair of 1-score wins, but their offense has shown for more consistent stretches what Indiana's offense has shown at times this season, which is, hey, if we need to go punch for punch with you in a shootout, we can. Oregon has done that this season, and they've got Wisconsin on the road and then Washington at home to close the season. There's a very real possibility the Ducks go 12-0. And then let's just face it right now. As of right now, the most likely outcome is that Indiana and Ohio State are both 11-1. And then you look at Penn State. They were 35-6 winners over Washington in that whiteout last night. Penn State, Purdue, Minnesota, Maryland to close the season. Now, Minnesota does have a top 15 upset this year at home against USC, which at the time looked like a really good win, but USC obviously kind of had the wheels fall off their season. If Minnesota doesn't play spoiler, then you're also looking at a scenario where Penn State can go 11-1. So then you'll have 3 teams at 11-1 this season. And the strength of schedule does not favor IU if that is the case. But I think for IU, it's almost better. And I know that's how this is going to sound. It's almost better if you keep Ohio State close, beat the brakes off Purdue, lose the tiebreaker, get left out of the Big Ten championship, and then get an at-large. Because if Indiana, say, is 11-2 with a Big Ten championship loss and a loss to Ohio State, I honestly think the committee would be more inclined to keep them out of the playoff. Because you see them in 2 big environments, you see that they lose both games. I think that there is a chance that if that happens to Indiana, if they go 11-2, that they get left out.
But is that a possible scenario for them to make the Big Ten championship while losing to Ohio State?
You would need Penn State to lose.
But still, Ohio State would be 11-1. You need Ohio State to lose too.
Yeah, you would. You need Ohio State to lose to Michigan, which, I mean,
No, it's at Ohio State.
it's
it's
at the shoe. But
not a
still,
chance. No.
Ryan Day,
No,
big game, Ryan Day.
That's not a big game.
It is a big game because it's Michigan.
It'll be against a 6-5 team though.
But it's always a big game when it's Michigan.
It is always a big game, and Ryan Day.
What's the cliche about rivalry games? Throw the record book out the window.
True, but these two teams aren't even in the same stratosphere.
I know they're not on paper, but the games aren't played on paper. It would be it would be really funny if Ohio State beats Indiana and then loses to Michigan. Oh man, that would just be hilarious. I'm not going to say that's going to happen because I think you're right. I think Ohio State is miles better.
Okay, but again, if you want to live in that hypothetical world, that
Sure.
would mean Ohio State and Penn State both have to lose. So then you'd have 3 2-loss Big Ten teams. It's like who gets it at that point? I think Indiana is fine in that. If that happens, I still think Indiana's fine just because everyone else around them had to lose.
Yeah, but they don't have the brand. Indiana doesn't have the brand. They don't have the logo. Come on, Ben.
I don't know if it matters for the college football committee as much as it does for like AP poll voters who don't actually watch the games.
AP voters are stupid.
I stop giving it like attention. Like I don't understand why everything's all about what you rank to the AP poll.
It doesn't. It's just a bunch of writers.
It's trends.
Yeah. Oh well, this team was the preseason number 2, so we're not going to drop them that much, even if it's obvious that they're bad. Michigan. No, who's got it better than us? A lot of people, actually. Great question, though. But yeah, you look at the resumes. Indiana, they don't have a ranked win. Well, they scheduled the defending national champs, the national championship runners-up, and they both sucked. Is that Indiana's fault? Like, how many times have we seen both teams come out of the national championship game and barely tread water in the following season? When Indiana announced this schedule, Michigan and Washington were looked at as the national championship favorites. You cannot control what your opponent does. If you're a player, you can't control your opponent. You just control how you handle it. Indiana got the job done. That's the bottom line. So, there's a lot to fix before Indiana goes to Columbus on November 23rd. That will be the biggest game in Indiana football program history. So far. But man, pinch me. Indiana's 10-0, and you're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Welcome back to IU Sports Sunday. He's Ben Haller. I'm Nick Rodecat. Ben, I turned 21 in about 2 weeks, and Indiana last lost on my 20th birthday. I was thinking about that last night, and it just seems so crazy when you put it into that perspective. Like, oh, IU's last loss was on my last birthday. My next birthday's coming up 2 weeks from tomorrow, and they still haven't lost. It just feels weird. Like something is off in the balance of the universe. You ask anybody around the country where Indiana was picked before the season. 17th in the Big Ten. 18th in the Big Ten. What was it Curt Cignetti said at Big Ten Media Days about being picked to finish last?
He's been picked to finish second to last before, and he said, look how that went, and gave one of his signature Curt Cignetti laughs.
Picked twice to finish at the bottom of the conference. The first time they played for a conference championship at Elon against James Madison, actually. The second time at JMU in 2022, they were picked last. They ended up winning the conference championship. And he said, I'm not into making predictions. That's just a historical fact. It's a pretty good prediction, though.
It was a great prediction. I mean, I don't know how many times I've said this, but I was sitting in Lucas Oil Stadium. A little bit in some of his media availability. You saw it too from the spring, but specifically this summer, sitting in Lucas Oil Stadium, listening to him say these things, thinking this guy has no idea what he's in for. I mean, he is setting himself up for failure with It's past confidence. It was cockiness at a certain point.
It was straight up arrogance.
He hadn't done anything yet.
Yeah.
And he was saying all these things. He was talking about. It was all about me. That was the craziest thing too. Usually when a coach does that, it's like, oh, brother, here we go again. This guy thinks he's too important. It's impossible to overstate how important Curt Cignetti has been to Indiana.
Yeah, I just remember thinking like, oh, he says that we're going to go out to UCLA and kick someone's rear end. And, okay, sure, I guess. Like, maybe you will, but if you do, like, UCLA is not good this year. By the way, UCLA is actually having a pretty good year. They have improved a lot since Indiana went out to the Rose Bowl a couple months ago. Cignetti's like, oh, yeah, we played for a conference championship. Both times we were picked to finish last in the conference. Well, the Big Ten was so top-heavy, we thought that there was no way that Indiana could do that. Like, maybe before the season, I was thinking that 7-5 would be a good year for them.
Dude, that's the thing. It was like, go 6-6 this year, make a bowl game.
Because that's what defines success. And if you can win a bowl game, whoo-hoo, you are hot value cargo in the city of Bloomington.
I mean, what, you go 2-10 to 4-8 to 3-9 the last 3 seasons before this one?
Obviously didn't love each other hard enough.
Well, change of culture is the big thing, too.
And it's been so instant.
Yeah, it has.
It just, we're going to come in, we're going to flip the roster, we're going to win 10 games in my first year as head coach. So what? It's not that hard. I'm Curt Cignetti. I win. Google me. There's just no nonsense about him. And again, this bye week for Indiana is going to be huge. Because they got to get healthy, first of all. I don't know if Curtis Rourke re-aggravated his thumb injury or what. Andrew Hillsman pointed out to me when we were calling the game for WIUX yesterday. He just looked different on those throws in the second half. He didn't have a lot of time to throw, which is why a lot of people were thinking, why didn't they just set up more screen passes? Because they didn't really do that. It was kind of odd. But Rourke didn't look great. Ellison got the wind knocked out of him. Miles Price got rocked. Somehow not a helmet-to-helmet hit, but the one on Jameer Johnson was. Thank you, Big Ten, for once again taking a great football game and making it all about your phenomenal referees. Because, oh man, there's nothing I think more as a football fan than, boy, I want to go watch the refs today. Yeah, that's why I'm going to pay for a ticket and show up and cheer on my team for 3.5 hours so I can watch the refs dictate the game. It's just so dumb. I get that targeting is supposed to protect players, but it's enforced so subjectively that it ends up, not a fan. Not a fan of targeting. Targeting and I will not be having Thanksgiving dinner together this year.
I've had it's called weird. I'll just say that. But it's a rule that has to be taken.
I know, but there's got to be a better way.
Yeah. Okay,
go
back to Jameer Johnson's hit. Did he do anything that's like threatening the life of anybody?
He didn't launch.
No, but you have to discourage football players from hitting that way.
Yeah, okay.
You have to.
So what? The hit on Miles Price wasn't even reviewed?
It was. It should have been. I'm not. That should have been targeting.
That's the problem with it. It's not the rule itself. It's the way that it's enforced. Because you're telling me that a guy, they called the OPI on Omar Cooper it was a pick play, yes, but that should have been the most textbook, at least review for targeting, because Price got hit up high by a guy coming across the middle, and I know as a receiver, you open yourself up to that.
Yeah.
As you can see, I'm very passionate about this. I understand you have to protect the players, but you cannot judge them making split-second judgments, literally at the snap of a finger, by going back to replay review, dissecting it at 20% speed from 18 different angles, and then ultimately deciding, yeah, Jameer Johnson, you're gone. But Michigan, we're not even going to review it. They did review the Alex Orji fumble for targeting, even though the quarterback was the one who lowered his shoulder first. As a defender, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to react when I'm trying to put hat on football or knock a guy to the ground? I just don't understand it. I'm just not a fan. Not a fan of targeting. It's not fun for anybody. I'm sure Indiana will appeal that decision, and they should get Jameer Johnson back because they had a couple targeting calls overturned in the season, but you can't overturn a win. Hoosiers are 10-0. We'll talk more about it on the other side of this break. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Welcome back to IU Sports Sunday. It's hour 2 on this gloomy Sunday morning, which is strange because we usually have the sun peeking in right about now. But it's not the case today, Ben Haller. But man,
the figurative sun is peeking out. Though.
Yeah, it feels a little less gloomy when Indiana is what now 10-0. It still does not feel real to say that because it quite literally has never been real prior to last night at about 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Feels as real as Shalubi's.
Shalubi's, yes, I'm sure. I heard actually the fans were rocking at Shalubi's. There was about 2 inches of gravy on the ground as they were rocking it up at the most real restaurant in Bloomington. By the way, Upland Brewing Company put together a Shalubi's limited edition. Was it a lager or something like that?
Yeah.
Incredible. What started as an AI-generated article turned into one of the greatest causes in Bloomington this year because all the proceeds from that are going towards a good cause, which is really cool. It helps when Indiana's winning too. It makes it go down a little easier. Yeah. But man, you look at the college football playoff picture now with the Hoosiers, and it's pretty clear if the committee looks at a 10-0 team in a power conference that they're going to move them up over teams that lost in power conferences. Mm-hmm. Logic would suggest Indiana's going to jump to 6. I could also maybe see a possible scenario where this is going to sound silly, but either Notre Dame or Bama jumps IU because Notre Dame is, Florida State is horrible, so maybe not. But Alabama going into Death Valley and putting 42 on LSU.
Yeah, you got to think about this, though. Once again, it's my gripe with the AP poll and even the coaches poll. It's just so trends-based. It shouldn't be, okay, you lose, so you automatically move down this many spots. I think Alabama, just with the there are 2 losses, right?
Yep, 7-2.
Yeah. So I think with the 2 losses, it's still hard to put them above ranked Indiana. Which, again, I'll see that in the AP poll. I don't think it's happening in the college football playoff poll.
And the CFP is the one that matters.
Yes.
So Indiana will probably be at 6. That's the most likely outcome.
The only way they don't get up to 6, in my opinion, is if I don't know how far they're going to move down Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia just got dominated, really, by Ole Miss. Yeah. Only 10 points, the fewest in the Kirby Smart era for the Bulldogs.
How about that Ole Miss defense?
Yeah, it's Ole Miss is kind of a wild card.
Another team peeking their head into the college football playoff conversation.
Yeah. And the SEC, depending on how the season ends, could cause a lot of chaos. I think it's only going to be a 4-bid league. I don't think they're getting any more than 4.
The SEC? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that the SEC is going to get more than 4 because realistically, I think you're looking at Texas. You're looking at probably Alabama. It's tough because Bama's got 2 losses. They got 1 more, they're done. But you're looking at Georgia. You're looking at Bama. And then from there, it's still kind of chaotic. But big picture, A&M is up there. Tennessee is up there.
I mean, Tennessee's seventh in the rankings. So.
Yeah, Tennessee, they're going to be in. Tennessee, Texas, A&M, and Bama, I would say.
Tennessee, no Georgia?
See,
this is where it gets interesting.
I don't
with the
like
SEC.
quality losses. I think if you lose, you lose. Like, it doesn't matter if you lose. It does. Margin of victory does matter. But at the end of the day, if you lose, that should be considered worse than if you win, right? Yeah. Like, losing should be bad for a team's postseason chances. Georgia has lost twice. And I know, Kirby Smart, good college football coach. They're 2 close losses, and it wasn't really close yesterday. But
yeah, but this is back to the whole college football debate, and this is the thing with Florida State last year. Were you content with Florida State not making the playoff?
Yes.
You were.
I was.
Even though you say losing's bad, and Florida State teams that lost more than Florida State got in.
See, this is
that's where it's just a big argument.
This is where the Jordan Travis conversation starts and ends. But
even without Jordan Travis, they still didn't lose a game.
It's a good point.
Yeah,
I'm going to stand.
I'm not arguing one way or the other.
I'm
just putting the argument out
I'm going to stand on business and say, well, I said it at the time. At the time, it did look like Florida State got screwed.
Yeah, but then again, what it proved to me is that the team with the better record obviously is not always the better team.
Yeah, and the thing with Florida State was they lost Jordan Travis, their starting quarterback, and the committee had enough of a sample size to see that, okay, this is not the same team without Jordan Travis. We can't put them on a national stage. And ultimately, you could have made an argument last year that Georgia got screwed out of a spot as well, and they put up 60 on Florida State. So the committee was ultimately right in that scenario. But I think in this spot, as it relates to Indiana showed yesterday that they can win a rock fight. They can win, they can gut it out. They can just grit through it. Your offense gets stuck in the second half, and your defense just goes to work. Makes it impossible for the opponent to get anything going. That's the kind of win that defines a championship caliber team. And I know Oregon is still the favorite in the Big Ten, and deservedly so. But Indiana showed that they have the grit. I'm going to be honest. They didn't look great in the second half. I don't think that's
Indiana?
good. No, Indiana looked bad in the second half on the offensive side. But when they needed to lean on their defense, the defense stepped up.
Yep.
I think that's huge for Indiana. Is the brand bias still against them? Maybe. But again, the college football playoff resume test is a blind resume. There are no logos. There are no names attached. It's just, here's what this team has done. I think that's going to favor Indiana.
Yeah.
And they beat Ohio State in 2 weeks. There's a lot they have to adjust to. Going into a crowd with 100,000 people screaming at you. A lot of film study is going to have to be done between now and then, and more importantly, they're going to have to get healthy. But if they beat Ohio State...
You going to be there, Nick?
I will be there. I will be in Columbus on November 23rd.
I've been saying this for a while. In the middle of the year, beginning of the year, the more Indiana won, I was like, all right, the more I'm excited for that game, not because I think Indiana would have a chance to win, but because of how great of an atmosphere it was going to be, just if you see a top 25 Indiana team. Now, they actually do have a chance to win, and it's going to be a top 6 matchup.
Maybe top 5, depending on what happens in the bye week.
Yeah.
Anything's possible in this season of college football.
Maybe it's not. Maybe Ohio State loses Northwestern, and it's a 6 versus 11. But
Ooh, Wrigley Field, the trap game. I will say.
A lot of trap games being played at Wrigley this time of year.
I feel like every game's a trap game at this point. We saw it yesterday. Miami, something about Georgia Tech. They're just their kryptonite, I guess. Haynes King, Georgia Tech's quarterback, by the way. 20 carries, 93 yards, and a touchdown on the ground as a quarterback.
Yep.
That's what Michigan wanted out of Alex Orji yesterday. Instead, they got 3 carries for 1 net yard and a fumble lost.
Yeah.
And a fumble lost. It's kind of like numbers that I would put up on a football field.
I don't know if you're netting 1 yard.
I think I'm netting negative 100 yards probably.
Well, negative 100 would be hard.
And 3 broken ribs, maybe getting stretchered off the field. But it's crazy. It's crazy that we're talking about Indiana being in the college football playoff. I think, honestly, this is going to shape up like 2020, where if they keep it close against Ohio State, they will be in the top 12, regardless of whether or not they win.
Yeah.
If they show that, and I've said this now for about a month, if they show that they can hang with the big boys, the committee is going to see that, and they'll be like, okay, this isn't a Florida State, where Florida State couldn't hang with the big boys without Jordan Travis. They showed that in their final 2 games of the regular season. When they had to start, what was it, Tate Rodemaker, I think?
And they won those games?
They did win, but it was not convincing. And I know losses should matter more than wins. Florida State was an exception to that.
Okay.
They were an outlier. They are not the norm. And I do think it's kind of funny the way that they tried to kind of sue their way out of the ACC by saying that, they're better than this conference, and the conference is the reason that they didn't make the CFP. And they turn around and they're 1-9.
Yeah, they're a mess right now.
Just a total mess. And they brought in DJ Uiagalelei, who they thought was going to be the answer at quarterback to replace Jordan Travis. Whew. I've got some news for you, Seminole fans.
You're telling me it didn't work out?
It did not work out. And it's crazy because Uiagalelei was so talented at Clemson, at least we thought. Yeah. Just like we thought Indiana was going to finish 17th in the Big Ten this year. But if you thought that then like the person who thinks, oh, I forget what I was going to say. I said it earlier. I have a beachfront property in Wyoming to sell you.
Oh, yeah.
If you thought that DJ Uiagalelei and Florida State were going to rebound after that loss to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech loves playing spoiler.
Yeah, they do.
It's 2 top 10 wins for them this season.
Yep.
I mean, good for them. Good for them. But, man, everything's coming up Hoosiers in the college football playoff. And, Ben, Indiana basketball plays a game today.
Yeah.
You're going to be calling that game.
I will be.
And I got to tell you, as a spectator, as someone who was born and raised in an IU family, I would usually care more about IU basketball than I do right now. But it's just when the football, like, how does Bama do it? Because Bama is a school where Tennessee is as well. Their football team is great and their basketball team is great. How do you? I don't know.
Indiana fans might have to figure it out.
You got to make a decision. It's a great problem to have.
I don't think a decision has to be made.
Yeah, I don't know. Because, like, the whole Adam Howard thing with IU basketball. And people, I don't think were right in saying this. They're like, oh, Mike Woodson needs to be gone now. No, he doesn't. If they lay an egg this year, then we'll talk about it. But with men's basketball, it just seems like there's a lot of drama on the outside looking in. And with football, it's like, just win. Doesn't matter how. They don't ask how. They ask how many. They got 10 and 10 tries. I think that's pretty good. No basketball team's ever going to go undefeated. But it's just, man, I just don't have the same kind of oomph about IU basketball as I did as a student, at least, when the football team was bad in the past.
Yeah. Here's my take on it. If this was last year, pair Indiana's football team last year with this year's last year's basketball team with this year's football team, I think there would be less excitement for me. But
that's true.
I still I'm very interested to see how this team plays out with this much talent in the front court with Umar Ballo and Malik Renew and Miles Rice looked really good in that exhibition. A little slower in the first game of the year, still looked decent. Keenan Carlisle was hurt a little bit, but such a deep Indiana team. They didn't show as much depth off the bench scoring wise in that first game, but it's a team that I think is going to have a really good year.
Yeah, and if men's basketball and football are good at the same time, Bloomington might start levitating. We'll talk more about that after this. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. So now, as the calendar shifts from Saturday to Sunday, Indiana football is 10-0. That much we know. The Hoosiers on a bye will not play again until November 23rd when they face either 1-loss or 2-loss Ohio State in Columbus at the Horseshoe in Ben Haller's great state of Ohio.
Mine.
You are.
My state of Ohio.
You are the state of Ohio. And so, Hoosiers, I think, biggest takeaways, a lot to adjust from, a lot to learn from. Time to get healthy. Bye week comes at a perfect time. So now we get to focus on IU basketball for the next 13 calendar days, and that starts today. The Hoosiers take on Eastern Illinois at noon. You will be there on the call for WIUX. And, after that game against SIU Edwardsville, at one point it was tied, middle of the first half. Obviously, first game jitters, kind of expected. It happens around the country. But, what are you looking for out of Indiana men's basketball today?
Yeah, first off, I want to say if you just look around the country, things are changing in the college basketball world in a couple of ways. Number one, with the transfer portal, how active it is, and how much of each power conference team's makeup is transfer portal guys, it is always going to take some teams time to get going. I don't think you should be worrying about the margin of victory the first few games of the season playing these bad teams. Obviously, that's one of the biggest reasons. The other reason too is with some COVID guys left over who have earned their sixth years now. Some of these mid-major teams are very experienced, have very old experienced guys. I think that's just what's going to happen. So margin of victory is not something I'm going to be like, oh wow, they only won by this game by 15 points. They should have won by 25. I'm not too worried about that. I'm worried about a couple of things. Number one, I'm worried to see defensive rotations for this Indiana team. They were over-helping a little bit on SIU Edwardsville. That's why SIU made a decent amount of threes. They could not do anything inside on Indiana, so there was no need to over-help. But I think that's what Mike Woodson's going to try to do this year is really just in my opinion, over-rotate. I thought Indiana's defense in the past had been solid, but that's something Mike Woodson said he wants to change. He also said he wants to change the pace. He wants to go faster, be a faster tempo team, and I think we saw that definitely against SIUE. Led to some turnovers. Indiana had 16 turnovers on Tuesday, which, again, I said it, is more of a product of trying to play faster and a team that doesn't play fast, having to make that change. I think there's going to be growing pains there again.
Yeah, and really the kind of lucky thing for Indiana, SIU Edwardsville attempted 26 threes and made just 5. They were getting looks.
They were getting really good looks.
Yeah, and against a better team, they're going to knock those down.
Right.
SIU Edwardsville, not a very high caliber team, but against a team that can actually shoot the three ball, you're going to get punished for those kinds of defensive mistakes. Indiana, luckily for them, did not, because SIUE only shot 35% from the floor and 19% from three. That's just not going to get it done. But they definitely, I think, did kind of expose some of those early flaws in Indiana's defense. And again, it's kind of like a communication thing, which is something that, you can rep and practice all you want. You still got to put it on the floor in a game situation. I think it's different. And that's why you play these early season games. But Indiana does, I think, have a big test. I'm going to say big just because it's a power conference team early in the season when South Carolina comes to town next Saturday. Mm-hmm. Of course, with Indiana football not playing, that's going to draw a lot of people in for the basketball game. South Carolina, having lost a game already this season, not great, because if you're looking for like a resume-boosting non-conference win, South Carolina losing their first game of the season, not going to help things for them. But obviously there's a very, very long way to go. And South Carolina lost to North Florida. Yeah, North Florida.
Yep.
At home by 3. I didn't even know North Florida existed. I'm not going to lie to you.
Out of the ASUN.
Yeah. Now I know.
Yeah.
They put me on notice, that's for sure. But still a big test because it's an SEC team coming in. It's early. There's a lot of unknowns.
Well, look, this is it's a pretty weak non-conference slate for Indiana this year. You have the South Carolina, and then you go down to Maui the week of Thanksgiving for 3 games. Outside of those 4, it's 7 bye games. You don't play a true road non-conference game this year. And I don't hate it. I think if you dissect the committee last year, not only with who got into the tournament, but with seedings and everything like that, margin of victory mattered, which it has never, and I mean never, meant anything in college basketball until this most recent year. And it's just because that it matters to the net rankings and to KenPom, and those are 2 things that the committee looks at, whether you like it or not. So what teams are doing is they're just really loading up on really bad teams to get that margin of victory up. Which, if that's how the committee's gonna view things, I mean you can't blame Indiana for doing that.
Yeah, you can't blame them for playing the game.
No.
And yeah, you're right. You look at IU's non-con, they don't play a single road non-conference game. Yeah. Like going into another team's arena.
They have neutral sites, but no true road games.
Yeah, because they don't even, outside of the Bahamas, which is, an early season tournament, it's one of those things where you obviously you want to win. But you can't put a lot of stock in it until you get the bigger picture of how every team's season is going to play out.
Yeah.
Indiana does not go on the road to another team's arena to play in a road environment until December 13th.
Nebraska?
When they go to Nebraska. I will be there, by the way. You and I made that drive once. I'll be making it again here in about a month.
You could have fun with it. I will not be seeing you in Lincoln, Nick.
Oh, man. I might actually just have to commandeer my own private jet. Hopefully not having an Auburn situation.
Oh, my.
On that jet.
Oh, my.
But, man. Yeah.
Misread fight or flight for fight on flight.
The difference one letter can make is incredible. Change an R to an N, and it just goes crazy. But, yeah, that's Indiana's first road game.
Yep.
Friday night in Lincoln. Thankfully for Indiana, Keisei Tominaga ran out of eligibility because otherwise, they'd be in trouble. They would be in trouble. That much we do know. But yeah, I mean, Louisville, and it depends on how the tournament shakes out, who Indiana plays next in the battle for Atlantis. Both the men's and women's teams going, by the way. That's pretty cool.
That'd be fun.
But you look at the other teams that are there: Arizona, Davidson, Gonzaga. Obviously, they play Louisville. Oklahoma, Providence, West Virginia. Best out of the bunch, Gonzaga, I think.
Yeah, Gonzaga, Arizona is going to be really good this year, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting field.
Yeah, it's a nice mix.
Yeah. They'd have to lose to play Davidson. Again, there's a lot of unknowns because not only what other teams do, but also what Indiana does because it's the 3 games guaranteed. So you lose, you go to the losers bracket and whatnot.
Yeah.
Gonzaga is one of the best teams in the country. They showed that this week. Got I think 30-point win over Baylor.
Absolutely.
By the way,
Did
you see the VJ Edgecombe?
Yeah, was it Mark Few's kid getting posterized?
Yeah, Mark Few should get charged for neglect.
I think he should have been charged for child neglect for putting his kid out there to get dunked on by a guy about 8 inches taller than him. Just absolute. I know it was a huge dunk to cut the deficit to 38, but wow.
That was fun.
Chris
That was
Paul,
one of my favorite moments.
Move over. You got a new garbage time score to take the reins.
Yeah. Gonzaga will be really good. Arizona's solid. Providence is supposed to be solid. They haven't looked great, though. Neither is West Virginia. So that field is actually kind of shaking up to not be as good as I would have hoped.
Yeah.
But it is also a week into the season.
Yeah. Yeah, there's sample size is the enemy right now.
Yes.
In college basketball. Hoosiers taking on Eastern Illinois at noon today on Big Ten Plus. You don't want to pay for Big Ten Plus, you can listen for free. WIUX, Ben Haller, my co-host, will be on the call. That'll be fun. Because it's always fun in Assembly Hall. Unless you're the women's team.
Yeah.
Playing against Harvard.
Wow. I was on the call for that one, too.
Oh.
Big Ten Plus.
You were.
Yes.
What was it like to witness history as Harvard got its first ever win against a ranked opponent?
Well, on Big Ten Plus, as a neutral broadcaster, that game was awesome.
Yeah.
I think it was a ton of fun. I got some pretty cool moments out of it. But going back to as an Indiana student, they have some issues.
Yeah.
Some glaring issues.
And I think we knew that it was going to be a rougher season. Obviously, you lose one of the best players in program history, Mackenzie Holmes. You lose a prolific shooter in Sarah Scalia. You're going to have a hill to climb. But for Indiana, the women's team, 27 turnovers to 9 assists.
Yeah.
Is that as bad as it looks on paper?
I'll start by saying this. Harvard in their first game forced 34 turnovers. Or 35, sorry. I beg your pardon.
Watch out for the Crimson. Wow.
Harvard is sitting in their first 2 games of the season forcing 62 turnovers. So they press. They are really pesky. I have a hard time believing Harvard won't win the Ivy League this year. They are a really, really good team. They're a really well-coached team. But, yeah, I mean, I don't care if you're playing the Harlem Globetrotters. You shouldn't turn the ball over 27 times. The problem for me right now is I just don't see a leader with this team. You look at Chloe Moore McNeil as being, this 5th-year senior who's spent a lot of time with this team and should be that leader off the floor. I didn't see it on Thursday.
And I know that, Lene Beaumont and Lexus Parkinson were out.
It plays a big part of it.
But, I mean, come on. You haven't lost a game at Assembly Hall since February 2022, which I believe was against Iowa.
Yeah.
But,
no.
Man.
February 2022? Was that Iowa?
I think that would have been Iowa.
I thought they beat Iowa at home.
That was the year before. It was 2 years.
Oh.
Now we just got to check. I believe it was Indiana.
Oh, February of 22.
22.
Yeah,
the year before our freshman year. I believe it was Indiana's loss to Iowa, the last time they lost in Assembly Hall. Taking a look at the record books. Yeah, they lost 96-91. And then turned around, played Iowa and Iowa City 3 days later and lost by 6. So that was the last time Indiana had lost in Assembly Hall in a regular season game before Thursday night. Just, ugh. It's kind of like Terry Morin and the press mix about as well as oil and water. It seems like every time teams press against Indiana, they just don't have an answer. And, that was how, was it Illinois beat Indiana last year in Champaign? Was just, full court press. Indiana can't break it. Turnovers. Stupid mistakes. Bad decisions.
Happened against Miami 2 years ago in the NCAA tournament.
When Indiana was a 1 seed.
Yep.
And they lost to Miami on their home floor in the second round.
Yep.
That was probably their best shot at a national title. But again, one of the kind of things that took it away, the press. There are a lot of things to like about Terry Morin, but that one, the inability to handle the press, I don't know. It just kind of seems like it's the biggest flaw right now. That, and obviously, again, Bargesser and Beaumont being hurt doesn't help you, but you just can't lose a bye game to Harvard, a team that had never, again, rankings are not the best measure of performance. Indiana should not be losing to Harvard at home.
No.
But, man, I think that is a very big indicator of how much they have to answer for now with the absence, the graduation, the departure of Sarah Scalia, Mackenzie Holmes. But, yeah, tough for women's basketball. But for the men, they play tonight, or today, I should say, this afternoon.
Soon, honestly.
Yeah.
In about 2.5 hours.
Yeah, 2.5 hours. And we'll preview that matchup a little more on the other side of this break. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Indiana basketball tips off against Eastern Illinois here in about 2 hours and 20 minutes. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. I'm Nick Rodecap. He's Ben Haller. Ben, you will be on the call for WIUX Student Radio for that game. And, I'm going to be honest with you. The only things I know about Eastern Illinois are that Jimmy Garoppolo and Tony Romo went there, and that Eastern Illinois played Illinois in an exhibition and gave up 112 points. That's about it as far as the Panthers go.
That was actually their first real game.
That wasn't an exhibition.
Yeah, no, they did lose by 45.
They actually lost by 45 to Illinois.
Yes.
So let's see, what did Illinois do in that game? Oh, they made 16 threes. Why did they attempt 42 threes?
You're going to see that from this Illinois team this year. They're a really good shooting team.
Wow.
Yeah. And Eastern Illinois was giving it to them. So, obviously, Indiana look out to shoot a lot of threes. This is a different three-point shooting ability team than we've seen in the past for Indiana.
And, I got to say I'm disappointed. Cathedral High School graduate Jake Davis went 0 of 4 from the floor, including missing 3 three-point field goals. He leads the state of Indiana among high school players in charges taken, though.
That's it. That's a good number.
That's the kind of gritty, hardworking player
that
Indiana fans would love. But when you look at the Panthers today, not impressive. Indiana should probably win by what, 25, 30, somewhere in that neighborhood. But we've seen Indiana struggle with these kinds of teams in the past. I mean, you look at last year, Army, bad. They let them hang around. Wright State, Florida Gulf Coast, all early season games. There is nothing you can take for granted early in the season with Indiana men's basketball if the track record recently is to be believed.
Yeah, sitting at KenPom right now, and I take it with a grain of salt because KenPom early in the season obviously is going to have some holes, but Eastern Illinois is sitting at 333 in the KenPom ratings coming into today.
Out of about 350 teams?
364.
364,
yeah,
so
they're almost the bottom 30.
Quite literally one of the worst teams in Division I.
Yes.
Which means Indiana, again, early, but you got to get it done. There's just no excuse. And we've seen this kind of thing where Indiana likes to do the Baltimore Ravens thing, where you play down to the level of your competition sometimes. Again, Indiana's non-conference schedule is very weak, relatively speaking. We just talked about how they don't play a true non-conference road game. Yes, they go to the Bahamas, but that's technically a neutral site. They do not play a road non-conference game this year. You need to beat the brakes off of these teams. You need to show, because that's what Gonzaga did. Obviously, Gonzaga did that to Baylor, which is extremely impressive. Mm-hmm. You have to take care of business against bad teams. It's the same kind of thing we talked about with Indiana football. What are you supposed to do against bad teams? It's not your fault if your opponent sucks. If your opponent sucks, then it's your job to run them off the court, run them off the field, run them out of the arena. Whatever sport it is, you have to take care of business because that is what good teams are supposed to do.
Yeah, that's important. But I also think if you are looking at a team's resume at the end of a season, that's easier to say in football because there are so few games in football.
True. Sample size does not help you in football.
A 12 game win-loss record sometimes just isn't enough sample size to differentiate teams. You're playing 31 games. Even if some of these you don't have the margin of victory that you'd like, if you're winning those games, there's just more of a sample size. There's going to be more variety in records, more parity in records for teams. So it's not the end of the world. Once again, it's not. I'll say this: Indiana basketball beating a bad team by only 10 is not as detrimental as Indiana football only beating a bad team by 10.
True.
Just with the nature of the sports.
Because of course in basketball you've got 30 other games to worry about, whereas in football now for Indiana you only got 3 if you count the Big Ten championship, which they will be playing in all likelihood. I'm just gonna say, Indiana football will be playing in Indianapolis on the first Saturday in December.
You're bold. You're saying that right now.
You can lock it in. November 10th, 2024 at 9:45 a.m. I say Indiana football is going to be playing in Indianapolis.
So you think the Ohio State game's a win? I mean, it has to.
I'm nodding my head yes.
Even after this week?
Yes.
Even after yesterday?
Great coaches adjust. Kurt Cignetti's a great coach. I know he is ill watching that film.
Okay.
He might not be watching it today. I hope he is. I know it's a bye week.
He said he's taking tomorrow off.
Well, then he's not watching it today. Yeah. I wish we had access to the All-22 film in college football. I think it would be really cool. It's never going to happen because the NCAA hates fun. But I know he is going to be physically repulsed when he watches some of that film of Indiana football. And that's why I think they're going to have a great week of preparation after this bye week. They're going to get healthy, which is the most important thing. Justice Ellison will be, I would hope, 100%. Miles Price, I would hope, would be 100%. By the way, can we talk about how many miles Indiana? I mean, they've got to sign a deal with an airline or something because this is getting ridiculous.
Indiana has a lot of miles. Has a couple. If I'll say it this way, if I had a nickel for every miles ice this Indiana University Athletic Department has, I'd only have 2, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Miles Price and Miles Rice.
Miles Price, Miles Rice, Miles Cross. Sounds like a law firm. Miles, and Miles.
It's got to be more, right?
Price, Rice, and Cross. I don't know. I mean, we could. Yeah, I think they need to sign a deal with an airline.
Yeah.
Like, you can rack up your miles, get your miles, and then you have like the 3 of them like holding up like I don't know what, like a Delta Airlines rewards credit card or something. Although I did hear from Cruz Martin that the acronym for Delta is doesn't ever leave the airport. So maybe you pick a different airline. But I'm just saying, if Indiana all of a sudden signs an endorsement deal with an airline, you can thank me. I'm not going to charge commission or anything for this, but I think some professors in the Kelley School of Business should take notes. You should take notes that you are listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, we thank you for joining us on this Sunday morning. He's Ben Howler. I'm Nick Rodecap. Ben will be on the call for Indiana Eastern Illinois men's basketball here in about 2 hours, 8 minutes, and counting. Ben, a busy day for you. Busy day, busy morning. Especially, you're looking for a little role reversal, a little reversal of fortunes after your Bengals.
Oh, you didn't have to bring that up.
I'm sorry. It's tough.
It is tough.
Jamar Chase puts up a more productive day than most quarterbacks.
Yep.
And they still lose.
If the Bengals had 2 more wins, Burrow would probably be the front runner for MVP. But that's not the way
if I
things
had
work.
2 wheels and a set of handlebars, I would be a bicycle.
Exactly.
But I am not a bicycle, and Burrow does not have 2 more wins, unfortunately. But what we do know is that Indiana football has 10 wins.
That is true.
Yeah. Indiana men's basketball has 1. They're going for number 2 today. Indiana women's basketball. Unranked. They'll be unranked for the first time, in a very long time.
Very long time.
I couldn't even tell you the last time they were unranked.
You'd have to go back.
I mean, they've been a contender for so long.
I don't remember the 21-22 season. I don't remember if they started the season ranked. I don't think they started the season ranked. They definitely ended it season ranked. They went to the Sweet 16. But I don't know how long it took them to get to the top 25.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's just so long ago. Anyway, you look around the IU athletics landscape and Indiana men's soccer, one and done in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, that was weird. And
in an empty stadium, by the way. So shout out to the Big Ten Conference. Another master class there.
Well, okay. With that, too, I think reducing travels. One of the biggest reason they did that.
Yeah, but, I mean, come on. There were no fans there.
Have you seen the Big Ten's cutting travel costs everywhere?
I know, but you're not helping my narrative here.
I'm just saying. Well, the point I'm trying to make here too is just like segueing into the fact that do you know why they're doing this with all the travel cutting costs on travel?
Revenue share.
They're getting ready for revenue share.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a weird world of college sports we live in.
Which is why it's a good time that Indiana football is really good.
Yes.
Because otherwise it would sting a little bit. But yeah, I do. It is kind of scary when you look at the avenues. They're talking about making some varsity sports club sports.
Are they really? I
well,
didn't hear that
bona fide club sports. And the thing that would scare me about that is what if this is all hypothetical? It's a dangerous game to play, but one of the sports with a lot of roster spots is swim and dive.
Yeah.
You're telling me you're just going to jeopardize the existence of one of the nation's most storied athletic programs in Indiana swim and dive? That would be a very dangerous game to play.
Yep.
I know football is king. Trust me, especially with the way this year has gone for Indiana. The way a good football team can flip an athletic department on its head is crazy. But, man, the Big Ten cheaping out on travel costs, playing the conference tournament, the soccer tournament, at SeatGeek Stadium in not Chicago, Illinois. Tough. Indiana goes one and done. It probably doesn't impact their NCAA tournament hopes too much.
Their hopes, no. I mean, they're definitely
they'll be in.
That might have costed them a national seed.
Ooh.
They were 15 in the RPI going into that game. I don't know what they were after, but I'm imagining it's not 15 still.
Yeah.
It needs to be top 16.
I would think of it as like an Indiana women's basketball getting upset by Michigan, which is weird. Michigan did that too in the Big Ten tournament last year. Yeah, it might hurt your national seeding conversations. You're still going to be counted among the best because one match isn't going to hurt the massive turnaround Todd Yeagley has gotten going for Indiana this season. But final thoughts. I want your prediction. Indiana men's basketball today, Eastern Illinois.
Eastern Illinois did not look good against Illinois. Indiana looked okay against SIUE. I will go 89-58.
89-58. I'll say 88.
Indiana.
I'll say 88-59.
Wow.
Indiana, just because. Ben will be calling that game on WIUX Sports here in about 2 hours. The Colts will take on the Bills. Buckle up. Thank you for listening to IU Sports Sunday. Have a good rest of your Sunday afternoon.